Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are diving headfirst into a literal medical mystery at sea. We're going to look at a real-world crisis to see exactly how health officials track, categorize, and actually contain a live outbreak inside one of the most enclosed environments on Earth, a cruise ship. It's like a giant puzzle, and the stakes are incredibly high. So the clock starts ticking on May 2nd, 2026. That is the exact day the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, the ECDC, got the call about a cluster of severe respiratory illnesses aboard the MV Hantavirus. Now, you can probably imagine the immediate tension here, right? Any severe respiratory cluster is a red flag, but on a ship, that instantly kicks off a massive, high-stakes epidemiological investigation. Authorities had to figure out what exactly was making these people sick, and more importantly, how to stop it from spreading to the mainland.
Part 1. Outbreak on the high seas.
Now get this, the MV Hantavirus was carrying passengers from 23 different countries. That is a potential recipe for absolute disaster when it comes to global spread. But as of May 13th, containment was actually holding. Authorities reported exactly 11 total cases. That breaks down to 8 confirmed, 2 probable, and 1 inconclusive. And honestly, the absolute best news here, 0 new cases or deaths since that initial alarm. So how did they actually stop the spread? Well, unprecedented speed, for sure. Think about this timeline. May 2nd is the initial alert. By May 10th, the ship docks in Tenerife. And then by May 11th, literally just 24 hours later, all the passengers are disembarked and put on flights back to their home countries. The ship then just sailed on, completely empty. I mean, it's basically a masterclass in rapid logistical containment. Part 2. Meet the Andes Hantavirus. You see, emptying the ship was really only half the battle. Our medical detectives still needed to identify the microscopic culprit. And they did. They discovered the pathogen was the Andes Hantavirus. Now, this is a real game changer, and honestly, uniquely terrifying. Why? Because unlike other hantaviruses that you might catch from rodents, Andes is the absolute only one known to transmit from person to person. No other hantavirus does that. Fortunately, it's not super contagious like the common cold. Transmission typically requires close, prolonged contact with an infected person. Part 3. Tracking suspected cases. Because of that person-to-person risk we just talked about, authorities couldn't just guess who was sick. They had to cast a really highly systematic net. They started with broad criteria for what they call a suspected case. Basically, to be flagged, you needed a definitive connection to the ship since April 5th, a fever, and then at least one specific physical symptom. We're talking muscle aches, chills, a headache, stomach problems, or breathing issues. If you check those boxes, well, you are officially on their radar. Part 4. Confirming the infection. So how do investigators actually separate the genuinely infected from someone who, might just have a standard stomach bug or a common cold? They use this rigorous diagnostic funnel. It works like this. Step 1 is that suspected case we just mentioned, based purely on symptoms and location. Step 2 narrows it down to a probable case. That's someone with symptoms who also had direct contact with an infected person. And finally, step 3 is the confirmed case. That's locked in by a positive lab PCR or antibody test. Now, you might remember from our earlier data that there was one inconclusive case. During this highly structured tracking process, getting an inconclusive label doesn't mean the disease is mutating or acting out of the ordinary. It simply means the medical detectives hit the pause button. They're just currently awaiting further laboratory investigations. Basically, they're waiting for those definitive PCR or antibody test results to arrive from the lab so they can move the patient into a final category. On the flip side, the non-case designation is absolutely vital to the whole epidemiological process. And honestly, it's a massive relief. This is a person who was initially swept up in that wide net, maybe considered suspected or even probable, but whose lab tests officially came back completely negative for the Andes virus. It's a great example of how the medical elimination process works, right? It officially clears individuals, which then allows authorities to focus all their resources on the true outbreak. Part 5. Containment and public risk. Okay, so with the ship totally emptied and that diagnostic funnel actively tracking the virus, the ultimate conclusion was incredibly reassuring. The risk to the general population in the EU and EEA is very low. Because strict isolation measures were so rapidly enforced aboard the ship, and crucially, because the Andes hantavirus requires that close, prolonged contact to actually jump hosts, a broader international outbreak was entirely prevented. The system absolutely worked.
As we wrap up this explainer, the rapid and highly structured containment of the MV Hondius really leaves us with something critical to ponder. We just saw firsthand how rigorous epidemiological tracking, clear diagnostic funnels, and decisive logistical action stopped a rare virus right in its tracks. But with global travel connecting 23 countries on just one single ship, how prepared is our deeply interconnected modern world for the next rare pathogen to set sail? It's a serious question, and one that medical detectives are working to answer every single day. Thanks for exploring this with me.